Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today we're going to discuss the subject of things to prepare for if you're going to be renouncing your U.S. citizenship. So obviously for non-U.S. citizens, this isn't really going to be so applicable. And for people who are not going to renounce, this is not so applicable. But if you are going to renounce, which is an increasingly popular thing to do, and we've got a bunch of different clients who are doing it, then I think it's worth thinking about what things you do in advance. Now, I've done some other videos on the process of expatriation, what covered expatriates and things like that. So we're not going to talk about that actual paperwork, the documents to fill out, the fact that you have to be up to date on your taxes, possible exit tax consequences, planning around being a covered expatriate, etc. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk more like just normal things about the process of moving away. Now, it's also worth noting that even if you're not somebody who's renouncing, but you are moving away from your home country, these things, some of them may be useful to you. So we're going to dive into those right now. Before we do that, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the all notifications. If you're interested in these subjects of relocating abroad, getting a residency, a citizenship, planning your taxes, so international tax optimization, asset protection, help forming companies and opening bank accounts and investing and hiring people and all those kinds of things, please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send a message to our websites, offshorecitizen.net or offshorecapitalist.com, which are our only websites. There's some fake websites out there. Don't follow those scams. Okay, so I think the first place that we'll start is we'll start by talking about banks. So I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and we're just going over what the situation is for them. And I think the first thing worth noting that people may have a question of is, do I have to close my bank accounts down to leave the U.S.? And the answer is no. Generally speaking, some banks may close your account if they know that you've expatriated, so that's something to be aware of. But many of them will not. Many of them, it's fine to maintain your bank account. And even if you don't, they also don't know if you've done it. So as a result, if you don't tell them, hey, great, if you've got great banking service, I would suggest keeping it. This is a little bit different from some parts of the world where it's based on ties. The US doesn't have a ties-based system. And because it's not a ties-based system, it doesn't matter whether you maintain that bank account or not. From the standpoint, it doesn't make you tax resident or anything like this. But by contrast, you may have pretty good banking service where you are. And, so it's good in this day when banking is tough to keep that open. The second thing that goes along with that I often advise people to do is actually the opposite, which is before you go, you may wish to open some bank accounts. I really recommend you have at least one backup. And I would say the bigger thing is credit cards, okay? So here's the situation with credit cards. Most parts of the world, in particular Europe, don't have very good credit cards. The US credit cards are some of the best. There's some decent ones in Hong Kong and places like that. But mostly, the best credit cards are in the US. And so you can get a card that, for instance, has no foreign transaction fees and has points simultaneously. You can get really good points cards. So I would recommend go and get the best points cards you can while it's easy for you, because when you leave, it might not be so easy. Right now, you've got a credit score. You'll still maintain your credit score afterwards. And so that's, again, something worth noting, as some people may ask, what happens with my credit? You still maintain your credit. That's perfectly fine. And that's going to give you more flexibility than, a non-American or not somebody who's never built credit in the US, because it's a great place to be able to gain access to financing. So yeah, that's something that you may also want to consider. Additionally, when you were doing those bank accounts, I would be planning on making sure you can really easily do international transactions, international wires. This is not necessarily normal in a lot of banks. A lot of them want you to come in person. A lot of them have limits. It has to be over $30,000 or something. You have to come in, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is you're going to be out of the country. So make sure that your banking is set up to do international transactions. Okay, very, very important. Next things, obviously you're going to make sure you have foreign bank accounts that are going to match that. And you may not have done this prior to leaving, right? So the thing I've always mentioned to people is the most basic thing to start off with is set up a WISE Board account, whatever they call it today. And that's kind of a really basic thing, but you probably want banking somewhere else as well. So make sure you have that backup, because again, if something goes wrong and you have to go back to the US in order to try and fix it, it may be a while before you can do that. So just, yeah, something to be aware of. Other things that I think are worth considering, obviously you have pets, right? Pets, there can be some complications in moving pets outside of the country. I was just having a conversation with some clients the other day, and they're relocating it's not out of the US, but they've got a bunch of pets. And the process of bringing animals to another part of the world are not necessarily as straightforward as just you yourself relocating there, kind of interestingly. So that's something to make sure you played around with in advance if you're leaving for the first time. Obviously, a lot of people will already have left, right? But something to be aware of. And then the next one that's really significant is firearms. If you have firearms, then now you're in a quite different situation. And so you want to make sure that that is dealt with appropriately, because U.S. firearm laws are some of the most liberal in the world. There's like way more guns per person in the U.S. than pretty much everywhere else. And so it might be normal there, but if you're going to, I don't know, Sweden or something, or Australia, well, that's not going to happen. Those are probably bad examples because most people probably aren't going there, but a lot of other places the laws are much stricter. You can't have the guns the same, etc. So yeah, very important to deal with that. Vehicles would be another one to watch. You can, in theory, maintain a vehicle in the U.S. That's a possibility for you. This being said, realistically, if you're registering and insuring a vehicle and it's just sitting there, like, what's the point, kind of, right? Because again, you could be gone for quite a while. So, you can do that. And then the last one I would say is healthcare. I get quite a few questions about healthcare, and I'm going to do some videos in the future on different health providers and costs, etc. But it's worth noting for Americans that U.S. healthcare is by far the most expensive in the world. And so the good news is, hey, you're going to have much cheaper healthcare when you move abroad. Great. However, of course, you want to make sure that you get whatever healthcare set up in advance, and you would cancel any of those appropriate insurances. I guess there's a variety of other things you may want to cancel when you're leaving, related to whatever. If you're in crypto, maybe you're going to close your exchange accounts that are U.S. based, so you can reopen abroad, etc. So yeah, those are kind of some overviews of some of the most common things that come up when I'm dealing with people. This being said, there's, I'm sure, a bunch of others. So if you have some suggestions, please put them in the comments, let people know. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Go and check out my Twitter. Oh yeah, check out Twitter. Just follow at Michael Rosmer. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. We will see you very soon.